Hello. Oh my goodness. It's so nice to be here with you, Ali. How are you today? Welcome to the show. I cannot wait to talk about this topic. This is such an awesome topic. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I had the pleasure of meeting you at Meet Magento, New York last fall, and it was so nice to connect with you there and love what you've been building. You're the CTO of Tekglide and supporting retailers and B2B businesses and building out their e-commerce platforms. And as you know, I'm really passionate about e-commerce, especially for manufacturers. That's who our audience is, and that's who I work with a lot is B2B manufacturers. And so I'm super excited to talk to you about today, the e-commerce landscape, especially how to choose a shopping cart. I think this is a topic that can feel like a little bit like a black hole for clients who are just trying to get into this landscape for the first time and figure that all out and figure out which shopping cart's going to be right for them. So cannot wait. But before we dive into that, I wanted to just, learn a little bit more about you and have you share a little bit about your background and your history. So maybe let's start there. Maybe you can tell our listeners a little bit about how you ended up at Tekglide and your history and your experience.
Sure. Yeah, thanks again for having me on the show. So just to give a little bit of a background, I have about 20, 25 years of experience in the industry. Started out, in mid 90s after I graduated from University of Maryland, College
Mhm.
Park in electrical engineering. So I'm an electrical engineer actually. So I started out in telecom because there was a big telecom boom at the time.
Oh,
With dial-ups were there, and so my first job was actually working on those one of those dial-up modems that you probably have heard. Remember hearing all those sounds
yeah.
that come. So
You've
I
got
kind of
mail.
I had it all memorized at that time. So I was actually they used to call it firmware engineer. It's actually working on the chip, that comes was in
Mm,
those modems. So doing
yeah.
assembly language programming. That's where I lost a lot of my hair. So I did engineering for about 4 or 5 years. I got my master's from George Washington in the meanwhile. Then I thought, being an engineer, if I get my MBA, I'll come out and I'll be like, a hot commodity in the market. So I went to Carnegie Mellon. I got my MBA from Carnegie Mellon in Pittsburgh. I got out in 2003, 2002, 2003. We were in a little bit of a recession, so I was in the market. I got it. I started working, in as a product marketing person, and then I
Oh,
realized, the e-commerce was kind of new at the time. So there was
yeah.
like before the world of Magento, Shopify, BigCommerce, there were like those old shopping carts. OS Commerce is the one that I kind of got started with. So I was just started working more as like a freelancer, started doing some projects, started working offshore was a new thing at the time. Started
Mm,
working with some of the offshore vendors. So I picked up e-commerce pretty much, I would say almost 20 years back now. And then I kind of started on that journey. And then, e-commerce was a kind of a new way of doing business. A
yeah.
lot of the technology came along if people remember the, Y2K and the whole, the economy tanked at the time because the models were there, the technology was there, the people adoption of the technology was not there. So it took some time. Obviously, there was a lot of consolidation that happened. The Amazons and the eBays were some of the survivors of that, of that e-com kind of the start that happened at that time. So I kind of like started working with a lot of small merchants, trying to understand that, obviously e-commerce is a new thing, how to do business online. It was just, started with nobody used to care that much about the user experience and all that. You just want to have a website and start selling. But then people didn't realize you can build in a technology-wise great, but how are you going to get people to, be
Yes.
comfortable doing online shopping? And I think the
Mhm.
last 20 years, that what it took, and I think COVID really helped, kind of help, expedite that level of comfort. So that's how I kind of started out. So been in technology pretty much all along, and my role has been mostly has been the bridge between business and technology. So trying to understand client
Mm,
requirements and then working with the development team to get it implemented. Obviously, with my tech background, so I could bridge that. So that's pretty much what I've been doing, and that kind of fall into this CTO or chief technology officer or more of a technology strategist, I would say, role where kind of understanding the client requirements and then see what's the best fit for them in terms of helping them with their digital transformation journey. So that's pretty much kind of how got me to to Tekglide and being more of that strategist or an architect, solutions architect role, wearing multiple hats. Obviously, at the end of the day, you want to get uh, to get the job done. So sometimes you have to get your hands dirty as well. Get around with the team and get things done. So that's why I kind of like this role. It's evolving. A lot of new things have been happening. A lot of new business models have been coming along. Online has been really shaping up and taking. Used to be like a lot simpler 20 years back, and it has grown a lot more. Having integrating all these different business processes into it.
Oh, yeah, it's gotten so much more complicated. And I have to say, that's so cool. You're like a dinosaur. You're like an e-commerce dinosaur. You've been doing this for so long. You don't
Yeah,
look
yeah.
like you've been doing it for this long.
Yeah, sometimes I feel that I'm
Okay.
not doing it for too long because technology is changing so much, and sometimes it's
Yeah.
not just the years of experience you have, right? It's how quickly
Mhm.
you can learn new things and try to make sense out of it. So it's not,
Yeah.
it's the number of years or gray hair doesn't really matter that much when it comes to technology. Sometimes
Yeah.
even I feel that the young people who are coming in the industry, they have they are quick to understand because they don't have to unlearn, because unlearning is harder when it comes to technology. So you have to unlearn and then learn new things. So that kind of makes it a little challenging, especially for dinosaurs like me.
Oh, I think that's such a fascinating and interesting point is the way the pace of change in technology and in everything is happening so much more rapidly. What advice would you give to folks in your industry or in any industry in technology in general on how you can kind of create and cultivate this approach of being flexible to change? Like what strategies do you think help you and your team to make sure that you're adapting to that as it's happening?
I think you have to be open-minded. You have to be agile. That you kind of, be. I mean, you cannot like. I mean, anything new comes along, you want to get into and try to understand it, try to make sense out of it. For example, like this whole thing with AI, right? Last year and a half, it's just been everything AI, everything AI. You kind of have to and that's where I think the experience comes in, that you can kind of actually break it down and try to make sense out of it, that okay, this is a technology, but
Mm,
how it's going to be beneficial for for example, in the world of e-commerce, to the merchants, how AI could be beneficial for them, and what will be. And actually there's a lot of hype behind it as well. It's not all just there's a benefit to it, but there's a hype as well. So you have to kind of make the determination and decipher, what's out there. And that's where I think your experience comes in handy,
mm.
that you can kind of make sense out of, what are the new things coming and how to get incorporate that into things that you are doing, and how you can help, the merchants leverage that technology which is out there.
Yeah, so dinosaurs are still important because of all that experience. You've got all that instinctual knowledge that can help you suss out
Yes.
what
I,
really is important to focus on versus what might just be, you know, a fly by the, what do they call that? You fly by night type of,
yeah.
flash in the pan. Flash in the pan. That was what I wanted to say.
Yeah,
A flash.
unlearning is the hardest part,
Mm. Yeah,
sometimes,
I bet.
than learning new things. So yeah.
Yeah, and I love all of that wonderful experience. That's fantastic. What would you say has been like your kind of like overarching reason or why for what you do every day? What kind of like lights you up? What makes you super excited about what you bring to work?
So I'm a firm believer that business should drive technology, right? And
Yes.
that's what that's what keeps me going. That I would like to learn more about the businesses, more about what they do, and then see how can technology can map, can give them the solution so they can bring those operational efficiencies in their organization, or reach out to their better in a better way to their customers. So I think that's what kind of keeps me going, because there are always new problems to solve, you know
Yeah.
and in that process you learn more, when you are looking for solutions. That's how you start learning. So a lot of the time, we try to fit technology into business, like for example, people come to us with a preconceived notion that they want to work with certain platform, and
Mhm.
it's just that how, and then we go down that track. But sometimes you have to go take a step back and see, okay, why we are doing this, what's the business reason behind it. And I think that's what I feel that is an important element, sometimes get missed in this kind of a rat race.
I love that. Business drives technology. That is such an important point, and you're so right. I mean, I've worked with clients before too that have a very like, they're like, I need this platform. And it's kind of like, well, wait on, hold on a second. Let's step back and let's understand a little bit more about what your business priorities are and requirements and really do that due diligence. And I love what you said earlier about how your role at Tekglide really is to kind of bridge that gap, right, between the business needs and the business requirements and the technology side of things. And that's such an important and critical role. And it really ties into the topic of our show today, which is really helping these clients and customers know which shopping cart and helping guide them to figure out which shopping cart is going to be the best for their business. But I got to give a massive shout out to my dear friend Andrew Stout, who's joining us. He says, "Good morning, Nicole Donnelly. Nice to meet you, Ali." Thanks for coming, Andrew. I'm so glad that you're here today. And let's dive in. Let's talk about this. So, whenever I think about e-commerce shopping carts, Ali, of course, I think about the big, Shopify, BigCommerce, and Magento are usually the top three that immediately come to my mind. So as you're thinking about like these top shopping carts in general, could you just give like an overview of what you would say the top pros and cons are of each of them from your experience working with each of them and with your clients?
Yeah, so I mean, before I start, I'm going to again
Mhm.
reiterate that, it's very
Yeah.
important that you need to understand which, how do they align with your business objectives, and what
Mhm.
operational efficiencies they will give you, depending on your audience, are they customer centric to your audience? Scalability and flexibility also is very important, right? Today you have X number of requirements that you may have from the business side to be implemented, for example. Tomorrow you may have other requirements, how well the platform will scale to your business. And other thing which often looked over is that the technical know-how of the merchant themselves. How much of
Yes.
because some of these platforms require you to be a bit more tech savvy than the other, so you have to keep that in mind. So
Mm,
keeping that in mind, let me just give you a quick rundown into some of
yeah.
these at least major platforms out there. So let's say obviously Shopify and BigCommerce, they are hosted solutions, right? Or we call it SaaS, like software as a service, or hosted solution, what do you want to say? Which means actually, what it means is that they are actually running and managing the platform for you. So you don't have to worry about, you don't own the software, you just kind of like renting the software if you want to just, or leasing, I guess, probably a better word. Um, but the advantage to that is that you don't have to worry about the hosting costs. You don't have to worry about any of the upgrades to the software, any of the security related issues. All that is platform is managing for you. So you don't have to worry about that.
Mhm.
Obviously with Shopify and relevant for BigCommerce too, it's easy to set up. Shopify is a little bit easier in terms of their admin side of things, managing products and promotions and things like that is a little bit easier, I would say, than even BigCommerce. Um, Shopify has a large selection of apps and themes. So basically, like we are
Mm,
familiar with the app marketplace with our Google Play,
yeah.
whatever, if you're using iPhone or Android. So like these platforms also have a lot of these third-party applications. So if the feature doesn't exist in the platform, you can get it from that app marketplace. So Shopify has a large number of apps, marketplace. There are a lot of themes. So if you're looking for, don't want to invest the money in building your own design or interface, you can leverage some of these themes which are available. Some of the things that Shopify added, in the last year or so is that they have a big push for a headless implementation. So you can
Mhm.
have a front end will be separate from the back end. So that way you can have a lot more flexibility of what you can do with your own front end and using back end. So they build this hydrogen, they call it the hydrogen framework, which is actually a
Mhm.
React-based framework if we go into technical aspect of it. So these are some of the advantages of a Shopify platform. Some of the obvious limitations, again, is customization. That's a big area which often get overlooked. I mean, because it's very easy to build you can spin up a Shopify platform without much knowledge of technology. Just get a theme and just install it and get up and running. But if you may have a lot of business requirement, again, going back to that business drive technology, which may not be able to be achieved through Shopify, may not even be achieved through the apps that they offer. So that's where
Yeah.
you run into limitations. Certainly you can do customizations, but then there's a limitation to what you can do. One of the other big limitation on Shopify side to keep in mind is that Shopify payment, you have to use Shopify payment gateway if you're using Shopify. If you're using any other third-party gateway, you have to pay an additional fee for it. That's a could may add up, to the expenses. So that's something you have to keep in mind. There are other, fees as well that are, well, you have to pay if you want to do multiple storefront. You have to pay for each storefront. So there are things like that which you have to keep in mind. There are some SEO limitations in Shopify compared to BigCommerce. For example, if you want to have for example, you want to use WordPress for your blogs, right? So you have to you cannot use the same domain name, same URL as you want to use for um, for your Shopify site. So there are some limitations like that. BigCommerce is another great SaaS-based platform. It they but the advantage with BigCommerce a little bit over Shopify is that the base BigCommerce has a lot of built-in features for which in Shopify you may need apps. So
Mm.
that's a little bit of an edge that BigCommerce has. It's a great platform for B2B because of it can handle large catalogs. Though Shopify has mitigated some of that with some of the new developments that happened last year, especially with that they have added some of the more options in variant side of things. So that's something Shopify is trying to cover that gap, but BigCommerce has a little bit of an edge on B2B side of things. Payment gateway, you don't have to pay any fees, additional fees to BigCommerce. They are compatible with a lot of payment gateways. On the customer support side, BigCommerce has Shopify has a little bit edge over BigCommerce because they're a bigger organization, public company. They have a lot more customer support available than BigCommerce. Okay, so this is like of a SaaS-based environment, right?
Yeah.
So when we go to the open source side, or if you want to say, where you can own the software, it's going to be, product like Magento. So Magento has been around longer than any of the other, SaaS-based platforms. They've been pretty much since 2007, 2008. Um, they've been out there. They have a little bit of a history, I would say, a troubled history of ownership. It used to be an independent company, then got acquired by eBay for a little bit. Then they were again independent. Then they now are part of Adobe, right? So when Adobe took over Magento, so Magento is an open source platform. It uses an open source. Open source is like pretty much it's a PHP framework, so it's available. The code is available. Source code is available. You own the software. So that's a big advantage over any of the SaaS platform because you own it, so you can pretty much do anything with it you want to. But there are some cons associated with ownership too, so we can talk about that a little bit. But going into Magento a little bit, so just to everybody understand, Magento comes with different flavors. So there's a Magento open source, which is a free version of Magento. You can just go and download it from the website, and do whatever you want to do with it. And then there is an Adobe version of Magento, which is called Adobe Commerce and Adobe Commerce Cloud, which Adobe owns the platform enterprise version. It's not same as SaaS. It's called platform as a service. So they provide you with the hosting platform, and they provide you with the software. The enterprise version of Magento is called Adobe Commerce, but you still own the software. You can do whatever you want to do with it. But there is a hosting is provided by Adobe, so all the security, all the things
Yeah.
that they take care of it. So Magento is a lot more is better suited for an enterprise, and they are positioning more on the enterprise market. They are not, I mean, they are kind of moving away from that mid-market range, from the 10 to 20 to $50 million range of market, if you want to say, because they are targeting more on the enterprise side. The features are more geared towards enterprise. In the B2B arena, obviously, Magento is no match for BigCommerce and Shopify. Magento is like way ahead of them because they started early. They have a lot of BigCommerce B2B features, with handling, how to handle they better understand that space. So they have better features in that set. Though Shopify is trying to cover that gap, and they did a big feature set last year on the B2B space, but still they are behind, I would say, Magento when it comes to B2B space. But you have to keep in mind Magento B2B, even Shopify B2B comes more on the enterprise editions of the platform. So with Magento, since you own the software, you can do any customization. You can do whatever you want to do with. You can change. Like I have some clients who have changed the complete look and feel of how the Magento admin looked like. Since you
Yeah.
own the software, you can do whatever you want to do with it. They have
Yeah,
a
you
big
can have
model.
complete customization over checkout, for example, how you want
Yeah,
it to look,
yeah,
everything.
yeah. Checkout is
Mhm.
a great example. I mean, Shopify and BigCommerce, they're very locked down on the checkout side.
Yeah.
They do offer some customization on their enterprise versions or the Shopify Plus or BigCommerce Enterprise, but it's still very limited. Magento, you can do whatever you want to do. Though you don't want to do too much checkout customization, again, requirement-wise, you can do it if you want to. So that's a big advantage, which Magento has. But at the same time, the con is that, you own the software, so you have to manage it. So Magento comes with at least two major upgrades every year and several dozens, at least half a dozen security patches throughout the year. So
Yeah.
you have to upgrade that. You have to make sure, and some of the Magento upgrades are pretty significant. So you have to keep some cost, in mind associated to maintaining the platform. Just the platform, not adding more features, just maintaining the platform. So there is some cost associated to it. So the maintenance cost can go a little bit higher than Shopify or BigCommerce, where you don't have to worry about the platform upgrades and all that. You're just maintaining and adding features to the existing uh, uh, you know site that you have. But again, there will be limitations because of the customization. So, but there are other alternatives out there, like Shopware is a great platform.
Mm.
That it was actually, it's primarily a German-based company. They are European, but they're getting into the US market. So they are open source like Magento,
Mhm.
PHP, but their maintenance is a little bit, I would say, less costly than Magento. They do provide the
Oh.
flexibility. So they're more for mid-market. They're positioned for a mid-market, B2C and B2B space. So they are an alternative, a good alternative if you want to own a software and still want to host it yourself. They do have a SaaS version, I think, which is not available yet in the US market. So they provide the best of, I would say, breed from both the SaaS space and the open source kind of Magento type of platform. So it's a good alternative. There are other platforms out too, but I think Shopware, I think, is a good mid-market space that if anybody is evaluating, they should certainly consider that in their mix of evaluations.
My gosh, that was a fantastic rundown, Ali. That was fantastic. Thank you so much. I think you really very clearly spelled out the key differences between these platforms. So I want to give you a scenario, all right? Let's just say I'm a B2B manufacturer, and let's say 80% of my products are custom manufactured, 20% I've got SKUs for, but I don't want to have my pricing be public because I have pre-negotiated rates for some of these products, right? So, I'm not sure about putting published pricing up for these products. And I ship my products LTL, a lot of them, like based on dimensions and weights. And these shipments can sometimes be really heavy because it's, big, can be equipment. If you were me, what are some of the things that you would say or advise to me in terms of which shopping cart's going to be best based on those specific business rules? Like what questions would you ask or want to know or understand more to help me figure out or to guide me as a business to know which shopping cart's going to be best?
I mean, some of the, I would say the basic questions would be that, like you mentioned, that you have, pricing that you want to hype to the customers. Do you have multiple
Mhm.
pricing, like, different pricing for different type of customers, maybe
Yeah.
wholesalers, distributors, or different sizes of customers? So if you have multiple pricing lists or not,
Mm.
you want to create something like a requisition list, you want to have multiple people in the organization and your with your clients who wants to be able to make purchases. So like like you want to create like a company account with sub accounts, and they be
Mm.
able to manage the products. Do you want them to be able to are you going to, I mean, what type of products do you have? Are these drop ship products? Are these
Mm.
just you warehouse those products? It's a combination. I have a client who have like multiple stores, plus each store act as a warehouse as well. So I mean, could be a lot of different combinations if you have some brick and mortar element to your business as well. Um, and then obviously shipping, you mentioned LTL, but weights come in, dimensions come in, what type of products, what kind of shipping options, you would want, air, or there may be hazardous materials, right?
Mhm.
That can only go, in a certain, maybe ground, not air. So there could be some shipping logic that needs to be considered. So I mean, there could be a lot of business related questions around your product catalog, your shipping, your payment options, purchase order. Is you want an auto approval? So what kind of, what is a PO approval process looks like, and things
Yes.
like that. So in that scenario, obviously it's gonna, so maybe if, let's say we go with a SaaS based platform like Shopify or BigCommerce, yeah, they do have a set of, I mean, Shopify now has obviously come up with a lot of features, but still they lack short in a lot of the areas, some of the areas that even I just mentioned, they will not be
Mm.
able to get you good coverage when it comes to B2B. Big
Yeah.
commerce is a little bit better, but again, not as comprehensive, I would say, as Magento. And again, Magento, you may have to consider Magento probably an enterprise version, Adobe Commerce, right? So they Magento B2B is I would say out of these three platforms is probably more comprehensive. Shopware has also a good stack of B2B options available. But the good thing with Magento and Shopware is that let's say the feature is not available, you can build a custom feature around it, right? Um,
Yes.
so that's something that's definitely is there in BigCommerce and in Shopify. If you don't have an app for this, what you're trying to do, then it can be like a problem. Like I can give you an example. Like I have a client using Shopify Plus, and they are working with a certain ERP, and there's an app available that sync the data between the ERP and Shopify, but they don't sync, for example, purchase orders, right? And just
Oh,
not
yeah.
having that feature, we are looking for a lot of workarounds just to be able to achieve that functionality, right? In
Mhm.
Magento, I mean, sure, let's say similar scenario in Magento, you could customize it a lot easier than compared to you have to do it in Shopify. So there are these things that you have to keep in mind, especially in the B2B world, you have to be very careful in going with a SaaS-based platform, because you have to make sure that it is covering, because sometimes, you feel that it's going to give 90%, but that 10%, there could be some critical elements in that 10%, which the SaaS platform just cannot do it for you. So then
Yeah.
you kind of get, hey, then you'll be scratching, your head and kind of trying to figure out the workarounds. So that's why, especially in the B2B environment, it's very important that you kind of have that deep dive into these requirements. Yeah, you're doing
Mhm.
pricing lists, but how are you going to be doing pricing lists? Type of customers, type of accounts, type of payment options, approval process. A lot of these things, small things can really, uh, you know, uh, break the camel's back, right?
Yeah.
uh, so this have to be little careful, in doing that, discovery process.
Yeah, I think you've really highlighted just how important the discovery process is and how that sets the foundation for the success of the store long term. And so, for anyone out there who's thinking about investing in e-commerce, it's so, so, so important as you're vetting partners and looking at partners to make sure that the people that you're working with or that you're talking to are really asking these really important questions. Because if you're doing e-commerce for the first time, I've worked with these clients, they don't know. They don't know much at all about what the business requirements are and how to make it work with e-commerce. And so it's so critical that you have a trusted guide who can really be there to make sure that you're asking and getting that information from the client and knowing what those business constraints are and what those business rules are so that you can build the store around that. But also, more importantly, too, you want to be thinking about what is your long-term growth plan for that store so that when you are deciding on a platform up front, you have a platform that can grow with you as an organization based on what your long-term plans are. Because, like it's really important sometimes with some of these B2B e-commerce clients. I don't know what your Ali, I'd love to hear your perspective on this, but mine is that, as you mentioned, the needs are so complex. And a lot of times they want to eat the whole elephant right away. And sometimes I think it's just so much easier to just take it step by step, understanding where they want to get to, but saying, hey, let's break this down. Let's just start with digitizing your product catalog. And then, we can grow and evolve the store from there. What are your thoughts on that? Like, how do you like to approach that with your clients? And what's your advice for clients who are going through this discovery process in terms of things they should be thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, definitely need to think in phases, in
Mhm.
incremental steps, and obviously, you know, you cannot digitally transform your business overnight, right? Online.
I wish,
But,
right?
I wish, yeah. I mean, and there is no, I mean, you cannot
Mhm.
just chat GPT and just write, requirements, and it'll give you the the custom tailored shopping cart for that. So
Right.
you have to think bite size, like anything that you can
Think
easily, and
bite size.
even from your business perspective, right? It's not just about technology. From your business process perspective, you need to probably make some changes, right? I mean,
Yes.
you may be using 10
Mhm,
different tools to manage your invoicing, your
mhm,
warehousing, your manufacturing,
mhm.
whatever. You need to probably streamline those too, because if you want, I have clients that come to me, they have 10 different software running, and they want all to be integrated to their
What's
e-commerce
the
sites.
source of
There are
truth?
five inventories are managed in five different places. You got to pull in. I mean, it's not. I mean, certainly it's all, at the end of the day, everything is doable, in
Yeah.
technology, but how efficient is going to be, what kind of complications, going to run into. So you have to streamline your processes too. So I think you kind of
Mm.
hit on the nail. You said maybe you start with the digital transformation of your catalog, product catalog, because trust me or not, even till this is, I mean, I would say in the last 20 years, one thing hasn't changed for me in doing the projects is actually the product catalog. That sometimes is you would think is the easiest thing, and it's every single platform is, they have done a lot of, make it a lot easier to add products, options, this and
Mhm.
that. But still people, merchants come to it, they don't have, basic thing, they don't have product.
No.
Some of them don't have proper SKU, cataloging is not
Or
correct,
pictures or content
pictures,
assets.
images,
Yeah,
they want videos, they want images, they want everything, but they don't have all that data. So that
right.
one thing hasn't changed, I feel, I mean, hopefully with AI they can it's easier to write content, but still then, I mean, a lot of basic product information description you want to display, because in the B2B space, typically in manufacturing and all that, there's a lot of information to be displayed, right? A lot of,
Yes,
product related
specs,
content to be
attributes.
if it's
Yeah,
a, if you're selling a lipstick or a beauty cosmetic, it's not that much information, right? But here there's a
yeah.
lot of information, sometimes even the technical specs, like that you need to
Mhm.
share, but you need to have all that data, right, in some way that it can be presented online. So that's something, the catalog building, the all that, it takes time, so that's why. And I would say, you time to market is also important, right? You don't want to wait to get all that information and then go online, and it may take
Ooh,
months and maybe years to do that. So you want to kind of break it down, even maybe you can pick a category or a certain
yes.
segment of your business and go online with that, and then kind of add incrementally, because you learn from it too, because it's not just about technology, it's also learning about how you're going to transform, going through that digital
Yeah.
transformation process. You will learn, you'll understand, and then, and that's why it's so important to have a partner who will work with you through that,
Mhm.
help you scale gradually, and kind of guide you through that process. So it's kind of
Wow.
important to to take it step by step, have a roadmap, and work, according to that.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head with the product data. That is really like, if you think about it, that's like the core of every e-commerce
Yeah.
project is having good, clean data. And you hit the nail on the head that that is such a challenge sometimes for the client to pull that information together and getting all the content assets and the images. I have been on that side of it, and it can be like pulling teeth just to get it ready, going, and
Yeah.
scheduling the photo shoots and the video shoots and all of that. But that it makes such a difference in terms of how well the store is going to perform. The better data that you have, the more performant the store is going to be if you have good, clean, and comprehensive data. And that's such good advice that you give about like starting with just maybe, you don't have to put your whole catalog up, just start with one category. That's such great advice, because these B2B companies, this move to e-commerce is very overwhelming. They're so used to doing and selling things a traditional way of selling. And so you bring e-commerce into the mix, and now they're starting to think about their business processes and how they might have to change the way they've been doing things, and how are they going to integrate this new way of selling into their existing sales process with their existing sales team. And so it's overwhelming. There's so much that they have to learn and do. So this idea of like just breaking it down, like you said, into little bites. I think you said something so good about like smaller chunks can make that whole process less overwhelming for them, so that you can start to have some of those little wins over time. So very good. My gosh. All right. So let's talk a little bit about well, you talked about open source and closed SaaS, which I think was really, really important. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see clients make when they're selecting a shopping cart? Or what are some things they should watch out for?
So again, say it repeating again and again, but business should drive technology, right?
Technology.
So
Mhm.
thorough research, like even like starting out. So
Mhm.
I would recommend, like especially on the B2B side, have some kind of like RFP or some kind of a scope
Mm.
requirement. Do some, I mean, within your, because you understand your business better, right? So
Yeah.
than anybody you're going to hire outside. So you need to first document what you have and what you need and what are your requirements, right? Um, so I think it's very important to do that homework before you start going to look for a partner who can help you
Mhm.
in this implementation. And then you'll be more informed. Like if you're talking to
Yeah.
a solution integrator, you'll be more informed. You can ask more targeted questions. So I would say do that thorough research, upfront with your requirement. Don't think of any platform like I'm. Don't
Yeah.
a lot of time you think, okay, I'm going to look at Shopify, and what are the apps which you're going to go to the app marketplace and start looking for all the apps that you need. I need something for quick order. I need something for bulk upload of my inventory and stuff like that. Don't look for that or something that so just try to capture your requirement. Assume that there is going to be a perfect shopping cart out there for all that. So keep that in mind. Document your requirements upfront. Do some of your homework, within your organization, and then you can start looking at the partners, or if you want to, you can evaluate on your own the other platforms which are out there. Certainly, obviously, a lot of natural place people look at their competitors and see what platforms they're using. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're using the best platform too, for the
Yeah.
so don't get. But certainly, it's a good place to start. Um, I would look at some of the look at the costs as well. There are a lot of. I mean, obviously there are.
Mhm.
You look at, for example, if you're using Shopify Plus, there is a cost that you have to pay per month, but there is some revenue-based cost too that you have to pay. Same thing with if you're looking at Magento's enterprise version like Adobe Commerce. There is all of these platforms have some revenue-based cost if you are going into
Yeah.
their enterprise versions, right? So that's something you have to see as well. It's going to be some those kind of costs too, some transactional costs associated with it. So those are the things you have to keep in mind as well. Um, and then obviously you have to look for a again, like, what is you think is better to go with a SaaS based or open source, SaaS, Shopify BigCommerce, or open source like Magento or Shopware, those kind of platforms. What kind of do you want to own the software because you feel that you will need to own the software because you will have certain requirements that require you to own it. You may be able to make that determination, or you may need a partner to help you with that determination, because it's your data. I mean, if you're with a SaaS-based platform, you're hosting the data, they own the data. I mean, it's all protected and secure, that's granted, but here
Yeah.
you own the data, you own it, it's on your servers and all that thing like that. So try to understand that, try to work with your partner, or if you can, if you have some technical expertise in house, you can kind of look into that and try to make the determination that what will be the best course of action for you. Another thing is also important, I would say, it used to be more like, B2C sites needs to look pretty, nice customer experience, user journey and all that, fancy words, branding, all that is for B2C. And B2B, I'm not proud. I've made some ugly B2B websites, in the past. So because they don't care about how it looks, they just want to be able to somehow people can go online and make business. But
Mhm.
that has changed a lot, in the last
Yes.
few years. User journeys, customer experience, all those things are equally as, or probably not even more important for B2B because they are more complex, right? The
Yes.
purchasing process is a lot more complex. So you want to make sure that your customers can interact with your website, can have a user journey. So do make sure that you do, even if you are working with a partner, they have the expertise to help you with that user journey in the B2B space, because
Mm.
it's different from B2C. Keep that in mind because of the complexities around it. It's just that purchasing process is a lot more complex, the whole buying process online. So you have to
Yeah.
simplify it. Obviously there are certain things, obviously you have to log in to look at pricing and all that.
Yeah.
You cannot take that away, but same time, you have to educate the customers, keeping in mind, because you're not targeting your existing customers. You're obviously, the reason you're going online, you want to grow your market space and
Mhm.
interact with your future customers as well. So you have to keep that customer experience in mind, and one of that determination should be there when you're determining your platform. Not just the back end features, cool features that you have, but from the front end perspective, what flexibility that the platform offers you. um, that's
Yeah.
that's an important area. Security and compliance, obviously, if you're in your space, you need to make sure, obviously, if you're in healthcare or those kind of, there will be a lot more
Yeah.
compliance related things. But again, industries have certain compliance that needs to be met. So make sure the platform you're working with, the vendor you're working with, they have ADA is a big area, which
Oh,
is like
yeah.
you
Yep,
have to keep that
definitely.
in mind. So it's not
Mhm.
just for B2C. As long as you're online and you're not ADA compliant, you are target for lawsuits, and there are a lot of trolls out there, unfortunately, which are taking advantage, lawyer trolls that, the lawsuits and all that.
Yeah.
The more transactional volume you have online, the more susceptible you are for these different kind of lawsuits. So ADA compliance, I would say you should be up there in your list of things uh, from the
That
get-go,
is so important. I'm glad you mentioned. I
So
had a client who was hit with one of those lawsuits, and it's so true. It's so unfortunate that people are out there to take advantage of those folks in
yeah,
that way. But also, like, I think the number of people with disabilities is like 1 in
yeah,
6.
that's
So it's important
unfortunately.
too to
It's
make
yeah,
sure
it's important
that
even
you're
from yeah, you're right. From that
because
perspective as well.
from a sales perspective, you wanna make sure you're reaching as many people as possible and that everyone can be able to access
And
your
especially,
product.
with the obviously all this, we have a lot of technology available, React. You can create a lot of cool animations and interactions and things like that, but it's not going to be for everybody, right? They
Yeah.
may not be able to respond to that well. So you want to have the other options available. I mean, there are, third-party tools available like Accessibility and those, they offer those services, but again,
Mm.
there are limitations there. So keep
Yeah.
that in mind too, and their pricing can really vary there too if you're using a third party tool. But there are some common sense kind of accessibility things too, which you can make sure that your solution integrator or agency is aware of that, and they have the expertise to help you in that process. Because in let's say, for example, if you're doing business in Europe or international, they have other compliance like GDPR and other
Yes.
cookies and all that, how you're storing the information. But it's getting into the US market too. Like, for example, California, they have their Privacy Act. So there are state-wise laws too, can sometimes vary. So if you're doing business US or you're doing business international, you have to be, make sure
Yeah.
that you understand all these laws and before you get hit by it. So there are those things that is important to think of them upfront. It used to be all of these used to be like an afterthought. Okay, it's all phase two kind of stuff. We just build something and get going. But some of these things you have to be watchful for from the very beginning.
Yeah, I think that's been a common theme of our conversation, Ali, is that a lot of this success of your store is really how well you are making sure that everything is kind of tackled and addressed early on from the beginning. It's like the foundation. And I love what you said about requirements gathering. I think that's great advice for clients to really take the time to do that diligence before they actually reach out to a potential partner and start with the business needs first before the technology. I was just at Meet Magento last week and went to a wonderful workshop, and it was at a workshop full of SIs, solutions integrators. And one of the questions I was asked was, what are some of the biggest challenges that you're experiencing during the life cycle of a project? And the most common theme that I heard around the room was it's really hard for the clients to provide us with the requirements for the store. Like that's one of the biggest challenges is getting those requirements gathering. And I think this is like a really big, for manufacturers out there who are considering this, those requirements are so critical to the success of the project.
Yeah,
And when you're thinking about doing it, it's really important that when you're gathering those requirements, you're actually talking to your customers and talking to your employees as you're going through that process to understand what is the purchasing experience like for them now? What do they value most about working with us as a company? What are the friction points? What are the employees saying are the friction points? And using that information to kind of inform, okay, based on what we're hearing from our customers and from our employees, these are the requirements that are going to be like top priority that we need to have. And maybe these can get pushed to later. And so using
mm,
that information as part of that process rather than just sitting down with 5 people in a room and saying, okay, these are our requirements. No, actually get out there and talk to your customers and talk to your employees and make it like much more focused way to get that insight so that those requirements are going to be really dialed in from the
yeah.
beginning. What do
Just
you
adding a little bit to that, so I started my career as being more of a software engineer.
Uh-huh.
So we used to build software from scratch, right? Now, obviously, we have these
Mhm.
platforms, so we scale on that and all that. So I feel some of those traditional software development practices have been lost in this, kind of agile based methodology sometime. And one,
Ah,
one, one area I want to get into a little bit is that, capturing of use cases, right? So I know that we have a platform, we just want to get up and running, build a team, get, going and all that. But, some of the, especially with the B2B, I'm talking about more complex requirements,
mhm,
you should have like, use cases, documented. And again, I would say bite-sized use cases, as small as you can,
mm,
functional wise, and supported by an acceptance
mhm,
criteria. Okay, if I want to,
mhm,
for example, have my add to cart, example, work in a certain way, you know, okay, what in that certain way, what is going to be the acceptance criteria? What are the different cases
yeah,
that can happen, and how the user will interact with. So if we can build those use cases and acceptance criteria, especially for those complex features or those functionality, forget about if you want to use an app or whatever, but let's talk about the requirements. So if you can have the use cases and acceptance criteria, that will be really helpful for the SI to document the requirements from the customers, and for the customers to see as well that, okay, this is my requirement and this is how
yeah,
it's going to work. And then take that and say, hey, whether we're going to use an app or an extension or custom or whatever, make the determination afterwards, but first capture it in some kind of a use cases, and then and then acceptance criteria behind it. So that way, I think it's easier to capture those requirements, because you're correct. I mean, the merchants, they don't know what they want to do. I mean, they know
yeah.
what they want to do, but they have things in their mind. But to get that out of their mind, that's where the SI and those, and that's a architect, solution specialist. That's what, just why that expertise is more and more needed now,
Yes.
because that's a missing link sometime, I feel, in these e-commerce, because we have great UI UX people, we have great developers, we have great project managers, over that, but that solution architect or solution specialist sometimes is a missing piece, because that's where we kind of
Mm,
gonna get that requirements, in those bite size, in those, way that everybody understands it, how the users will interact with your with the particular feature or a particular, part of your website.
yeah, it's kind of like it's almost like the solutions architect is the translator, right? They're
Yeah.
translating what the business operations are and all those needs are, and translating that over to the DevOps team to say, okay, this is what we need to do, and this is how it needs to be built.
Yeah,
And I
that too, and also just making sense out of it too, even for the
mm,
client too, so they understand too what the requirement is, because that's another, kind of, you have to communicate to them too that what is the requirement, and that can be the
yes.
the blueprint for your development, for your, QA, for your UAT, whatever the processes you have, because that will be the over. Otherwise, it just things can get lost, and and that's, unfortunately, I think that's where I feel that a lot of these traditional software development practices have been lost, over the years,
Mm.
with adding a lot more. Agility is good. Agile practices are great. I'm not, obviously, that's a way to go, but you need to incorporate some of these traditional practices as well into the mix, I feel.
Oh, that's such great advice. So tell our listeners when you say use case, because a lot of, there's a lot of e-commerce jargon that it's taken
Yeah,
me even that
I
I've
know. Yeah.
had to learn over the years. Help explain what is a use case? Like if I'm a manufacturer and I'm trying to gather my requirements, what would be an example of a use case that I would need to kind of put together?
So I mean, the example that I kind of is started on the, let's say, for example, you want your price to be hidden, right?
Okay. Yeah.
For not to be displayed to the customer. So that could be, like, okay, now how the user will interact with it. They'll come to the pricing will not be hidden, probably when they are searching, when they are listing the product, when they are, on the product detail page. So kind of have, use cases around it. Okay, this is what my requirement is, that I want it to,
Mhm.
for example, price to be hidden,
Mhm.
on product detail page, product listing page, search listing, whatever, wherever the product is showing,
Yep.
right? And then what is
Mhm.
the acceptance criteria? If the customer is coming from the website, from searching me, and my page is showing up, then on that page I'm not seeing the pricing. That's my acceptance criteria. On the mobile, how it's going to look like on the mobile side, when the price is hidden. So those could be, and then you can elaborate on what could be the different, and what will be the next step. Okay, so they don't see the pricing, but then now they click on the on the price. It could be maybe then they have to log in, right? And then they can
Right.
view the pricing. So what will be the process after that? So there could be different, use cases. Again, this could be further broken down, but I'm
Yeah.
just giving an idea that at the high level you have these requirements, that I want this
Mhm.
price to be hidden, and then you have these acceptance criteria that what all needs to happen for this to show up. Because sometimes you say I want the price to be hidden. Okay, it's hidden on the detail page, but it may not be on the listing page and not on the search results. You know,
Yeah. So you have
so
the use case and you're kind of setting out like these are the things that we need to check to make
yes,
sure that
right,
it's
right,
performing the
yes,
right way. And so
right.
when you go through the testing process, UAT of the site, when you're making sure everything's functioning the right way,
You can follow
you
that.
can go back and you can say, okay, it checked all these boxes. It's meeting this use case is meeting the requirements.
Right. And it could be, it's very handy for even development teams. So if there's any
Mhm.
complex requirement, they can take that use case and then they can maybe do a technical scoping on it, right? That how they want to do it, because they probably want to take that, functionality of, I'm talking about Magento, and extend it, into something. So they can do the technical, scoping based on those use cases. So instead of having just one line, I don't want to hide the price, you want to spell it out a little bit more. Again, this is obviously a very simple example,
Yeah.
but especially for those key features which are not there out of the box on the platform, I would say they should be probably documented in a lot more detail in this manner. And that way, it can go through, because there are multiple teams who are interacting, multiple people who are interacting with this functionality. So it's communicated across in the same language to everyone.
I love that. Yeah. And I think, it's just so critical for these complex B2B businesses who have so many business rules to really leverage an expert like Tekglide, a solutions integrator who can really help guide them through all of this process rather than just being like, I'm going to go set it up on Shopify on my own, right? And try to figure it out. Like, you got to make sure you have a really strong partner who can help you navigate through all of these nuances and get you in the right place. So, Ali, I have a final question for you, and that is when you look ahead, when you look at like the future of e-commerce, especially for B2B, what is it you're most excited about? Like, what are you looking forward to? What are some things on the horizon that you think that B2B companies, manufacturers should be thinking about that you're really excited will be there?
I mean, I'm excited more about like how I mean, certainly, obviously, from the functionality side, they're all behind the scenes, right? Integration happening, inventory, pricing, all that. The more of the user journeys, how they're going to transform on the B2B world, because like
Yes.
I said, B2B is a very complex scenario, right? Doing business. If somebody
Mhm.
like let's say we start with traditionally in B2B, somebody picks up, or your customers or your distributors, whatever, wholesalers, they pick up a call and they give you a list of things that they want to order, right? In a
Yeah.
very traditional
Yeah.
way. Now, how will
Some of
that
them
all
so fast.
translate in the online? Because there are a lot of business things, right? They may be
Yeah.
negotiating price with you. There may be different contracts out there.
Mhm.
There may be different type of products, there will configurations they may be asking for you, right? If
Yes.
you are in equipment manufacturer or whatever. So there'll be a lot of different, there are different scenarios, right? In the B2B, B2C is simple, you see this lipstick, you buy it, whatever you see, you just buy it, saying. But here is going to be more sort of, how that user experience will evolve,
Mhm.
and to helping, the end clients, being or your customers to interact with your website, to go through that user journey, and to be able to actually then come up with the actual thing they want to purchase, and being able to use that repeated basis, and it pretty much becomes your de facto way of taking business, right, of conducting
Yes.
business online. The whole omni-channel, I think, is going to be really great to see in
Mm.
the B2B world, how the mobile and the
Yeah.
obviously mobile is the everybody pretty much is the number one place for doing online shopping now. How the mobile will come into play with mobile experiences, right?
Mhm.
On the B2B space, I think that will be something very interesting to see, that how that these some of these platforms will take up that challenge too, and even from the SI perspective, how we can create those kind of user journeys for them, to make it more seamless, and make it more like a B2C kind of thing. I know it's not possible, but even make it that easy for anybody to do even a B2B transaction online.
Yeah, I think those are such great points because even in B2B, like if you think about, you're a manufacturer and you sell things by committee, right? So maybe you have a company set up on the, portal account for the company, and there's different roles, right? So there's someone in procurement, and then there's someone in the operations manager, let's say, and you have these different roles set up in the account and different permissions for each of them on who can approve the purchase to make sure that, it goes through. But at the end of the day, that purchasing agent is so used to buying on Amazon in their free time all the time. So they expect the same kind of experience because that's what they're used to as a consumer. And they're starting to have these expectations in the B2B side of like, I want to be able to just go and get a quote for shipping right there. That's what I get when I go to Amazon. So if I want to order this for my company, I want to know exactly what the shipping's going to be, and I want to be able to get an instant quote for it. And I want to be able to, and some check out. So some of those expectations you're seeing are starting to translate over to B2B, and it'll be exciting to see how that changes over time. And like, for example, Shipper HQ is a phenomenal example on the shipping side of what they can do to be able to bring LTL quotes, instant shipping. So I think those are some really exciting things to be looking forward to. And wouldn't it be so cool if someday, Ali, it wasn't e-commerce, it was just commerce, and these B2B businesses, like all their transactions were all handled in the same one platform,
I think,
right?
I think that's where we are transitioning. I mean, it's going to take some time, especially on the B2B side, but I think we're getting there, and a lot of these platforms are making a lot of efforts in this space because they are learning too,
Yeah,
what feedback they're
exactly.
getting. It's a complex world, B2B is a complex. There's no one, you cannot have a one-stop solution for them. But a lot of processes will change too, I think, because obviously,
Mhm.
as part of that, people are streamlining their processes. So it's an interesting time for the B2B. And B2B, when we say B2C is in billions, B2B is in trillions, and maybe a higher number than that. So because it's a huge market, right? And
It's
so
a huge market. I mean, I feel like that's the opportunity right now,
yeah,
honestly, is in
yeah,
B2B. So many of
right,
them are right,
yeah,
manufacturers, everything.
right,
So
right.
with it comes complexity, but right, we're up for the challenge. We like hard things.
Yeah. Well, I don't
Oh,
have any more here to lose, but yeah.
I'm losing
That
mine too, so I feel you.
is,
Well, this has been such
uh,
a delight, Ali. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's
right.
been such a wonderful, so much knowledge that you've shared. And I think there's just so much great information here. And for anyone out there who's listening, let our listeners know, how can they get a hold of you? What would be the best way to contact you?
So you can visit us on our website is tekglide.com. That's
Mhm,
tekglide.com.
mhm.
And my email is Ali, that's Ali at tekglide.com. That's the best way to reach us through our website, or you can email me directly.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And thank you out there for anyone who's listening. We appreciate you tuning in. Next week is a special, special edition of the show. We're going to have a Valentine's Day special. And I'm going to be joined by Jared Seitz from AcroCommerce. And we're going to actually be battling out the 10 things that we love about B2B e-commerce. So it'll be so fun. We may have special outfits. You have to tune in to find out, but it'll be super fun. So we look forward to seeing you next week. And Ali, thank you so much, and stay online so we can connect after.
Uh,
Bye.
Thanks for having me on the show. Thank you.